Hello, I'm Ryan from The Way of the Leaf, and we welcome you to our show, WoT You Feeling. I want to start with a sincere thank you for tuning in and watching. This show is designed to be a thoughtful and engaging exploration into the mental and emotional health aspects of the world of Robert Jordan. We are hoping to create an open discussion about mental health, the role of society, and how these two can be viewed through the lens of empathy and support. And joining us, as always, are Miki and Christine, my co-hosts for WoT You Feeling. And our guest for this show is our very own Brother Dan from The Way of the Leaf, the better half, I can say. And as a reminder, thank you. This show will contain spoilers for the full series. So if you've not read the entire series, please be warned. But we have a very serious discussion we're going to have for you. We are going to talk about change. And we have created a primer video that we released, which is about 10 minutes. And if you haven't seen it, please try and get around to it. But we discussed change and kind of gave a little theoretical background to the psychology of change and change management. And we caused quite a stir. So I just want to address some of the things that had come up for people and hopefully frame our discussion moving forward in a way that will be more clear and will cause less conflict that's unnecessary. So the gist of I was going to show everyone some screenshots of what people had said to us on Facebook and YouTube, but I decided I did not have time to blur out people's names, so I didn't want to shame people, and I didn't want to point out people and highlight them in any kind of humiliating way. So we're not going there. Just so you know, the things that were said were pretty harsh, and some were well-intended and some seem not well-intended. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to give us the gist of what was said, and we're going to discuss this briefly before we kind of get into the whole topic of change. But one of the things people kind of said to us was kind of basically, how dare you imply that we are mentally deficient for not liking the show? And to that, I want to very easily say that that was clearly not our intention for making that video. And what do you guys think about that critique, Miki or Christine?
I mean, I'm glad we're naming it, right? Because I think the important thing, one of the reasons for us naming the comments, one, to let people know we read them, right? We care about this engagement. It's why we do a live show. And so I do also appreciate that there were other comments that we're able to recognize that, yeah, it wasn't our intention to imply that people needed to like or not like the show. And I think we'll talk about that more too, about how those messages can get misinterpreted.
Mm-hmm. And the second main point that people are giving us is that there were more than just the changes the showrunners brought to the show that were, I guess, pissing people off, so to speak. They were very much saying that the overall kind of outcome, the product, the overall product, not just the changes. People were saying it wasn't the changes, it was how basically the changes were made that were making people so upset. So just want to point out, so to that end, again, we were not intending to shame anyone for how they appreciated the show. A lot of the criticism that people were levying at the show, I personally agree with. But what we are trying to get at, and what we're going to try and get at in this discussion, is kind of the overall understanding that psychology gives us around how we respond to change, and moving forward, how this might help us as a community respond to each other's kind of visceral responses towards change if we have more empathy. So we're going to be framing things in through the lens of empathy, and as always, we're going to be keeping this through the lens of mental health. So, Brother Dan, thank you for joining us.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
I really appreciate you coming on last minute. I do want to acknowledge that we have had our first. Oh, well, thank you, Beth.
Aw, thanks, Beth.
The idea is that we are going to try and come up with a brief primer video for each monthly WoT You Feeling to discuss the topic, give some theoretical background, and kind of give a brief overview so that we don't necessarily need to be so topical during our discussions. We can bring up things and move the discussion forward, and hopefully you guys have kind of a basic background to what we're talking about. But as I was saying, our first super chat comes from MaTsDaGger. Oh yeah.
Hey, Matt, thanks.
MaTsDaGger.
Yeah, thank you.
And that's a big change for our channel. So many changes. So many changes. Yeah, and I love that we're talking about change, because it's not just that the showrunners decided to change key aspects of the story. That's not necessarily the whole of the topic of change. What else has changed is that Amazon has introduced themselves into the community, and they've kind of, and we are all dealing with this as a group. And it's not just the show, it's the community at large that seems to be changing. And we hit a nerve by discussing it, and people really wanted to tell us their point of view about why it's happening. Why is it fractured? And everyone probably has a good point. I'd have to take them all together and create some sort of aggregate opinion about like what's happening, about why things are fracturing, but it's no doubt that things have fractured. So we hope to, at some level, make a positive dent in that, because we don't like seeing it. Mm-hmm. So, moving forward, so I'm playing Coast this time. This is my first time, so bear with me, guys. I have my phone. All right, so one of the key things we understand about change is that even positive changes causes stress, right? That's kind of a psychology 101, right?
Yeah.
Even though the showrunners told us that, yes, things are going to be changing, they warned us. Once we experienced it, it was like, whoa, loyal has no ears. Right. Whether or not that's positive in other people's minds, like it was stressful to experience. What do you guys have to say about that whole notion about even like positive change and causing stress, and that change is just something that has a physiological impact on us?
Well, I think with regard to change, sometimes terms like positive and negative can be very subjective. So what you might view as positive, or I might view as positive, somebody else might have a negative response to for a plethora of reasons. I think a lot of times we assume that an expectation for a specific outcome is what instigates a negative response to change. But I don't think that it's just the expectation. I think it's also a desire. So when we have a desire for something, even if we don't consciously have an expectation for it, when that desire isn't met, it can be really frustrating and really upsetting. People are very invested in this series and in the characters, and have been for a really, really long time. I mean, there are some people who have been reading these through difficult parts in their life. Like these characters have helped them cope with things when they were just having a really hard time in their daily lives. So I think when Amazon made the changes that they made, for some people, they were just really jarring, because it wasn't what we were desiring necessarily, or it wasn't what we were expecting necessarily. And so I can really understand why people would maybe have a hard time with the way that the show was adapted. There were some things that I didn't particularly care for myself, if we're being perfectly honest. So yeah, that's what I think about it.
Yeah, and you notice, everyone, we're going to be careful to not be. I made the loyal joke, but for moving forward, we're going to be careful not to be specifically. This is not a show to discuss the changes themselves or the merits of this change or that change. It is just to take the changes from the show as a springboard to discuss how we are all kind of dealing with it and how it may be better to come together. So yeah, we're not going to dissect the show, and I hope the chat does not spend too much time on the things they did not like, so to speak. It's just kind of, we've all kind of discussed that probably for weeks and weeks and weeks on end. So we're trying to elevate the discussion to something a little bit higher than the changes we liked or disliked. Brother Dan, which changes did you hate the most?
How dare you?
Just kidding.
But to your point, Ryan, you had said this is the first video, and I interacted somewhat with the community in regards to this last video that you guys made. And there was a defensiveness that had not occurred before. People were feeling somewhat attacked by the idea that that change alone, they felt insulted somewhat, that it's like, well, no, it's not change. It's not change. However, we have non-readers that watch the show, and they like the show much better than we do. People can say that it's objectively bad, but if you have 20 years of headcanon, then you cannot be objective. And so the change is harder. I mean, obviously, when we see that book readers don't like it as much as just non-book readers, there is changes affecting our opinion of it.
It's undeniable. Whether or not you came to the show, I feel like there's four categories of viewers: those who are very much open to the changes and looking forward to them, some who are trepidatious about the changes but get ready to give it a good old college try, those who are not going to accept any changes at all, and then I think so there's three. So I'm getting distracted. We're getting like super stickers. I don't even know what a super sticker is. David Ryan, I love your black cat. What's your cat's name again? I think we asked you this. Case I said, thank you so much. Unbelievable. Okay, sorry.
Well, can I bounce off of what Dan was saying there? And because I think one of the points that I have found interesting, and I'm going to just kind of like self-disclose here too, is that it's funny being a psychologist sometimes and watching your internal process happen, and sort of also being a backseat driver and be like, oh shit, that's that process. Okay, that's what's happening in there, right? And so, Ryan, you're talking about like those different type of people going into the show. I was one of those folks that was excited for the changes. I was reading about all the changes that were coming up. I felt really prepared for the changes, and still was surprisingly disappointed after every time I watched it for the first time. And like it genuinely surprised. Like I would be kind of conflicted internally. Like I had two versions of Miki, and they're being like, no, you like this. Another part of me being like, no, you don't like that change. And watching like, right, oh, like, okay. And being able to have that observation being like, okay, human beings, we have a natural tendency towards homeostasis. We like the things that are predictable. This is something that you have thought you'd been able to predict for a while, and it's not going in the way you predicted. And then I'd rewatch the episodes, and then I was one of those folks that really liked it after, rewatching it. And I also had the pleasure of watching it with my family. My parents aren't readers, and they watched it with my son and my son and I are readers. And it was really funny because we realized halfway through the series, we could not watch it for the first time with my parents because there were so many changes, and we were reacting to the changes, and then they were watching us react to the changes and going like, well, what are we supposed to be picking up on here? And it's like, never mind, they're just changing things. And so, so I think my point being like, even though I was anticipating the changes, I was still surprised by my reaction to the changes.
So you at first did not like what you're saying, and then upon re-watches, you gained like a better appreciation each time, right? My story is that in the immediate moment of each episode, I was enraptured, emotional, crying all the time. Like, but then upon rewatch, I would hate it. Like more, I would not hate it, but I'd be more critical, way more critical, and I'd feel like a little duped by it, like getting like so emotional about something that on the second watch was like, maybe not as effective. And I just knew that I was just bringing in my own feels right about the story to it. Christine, how did you deal with the changes? What was it like for you? What was your process with them?
I think I kind of stepped away from a lot of the social media build up to it because I wanted to go into it with my own frame of reference. Like I just wanted to watch it for myself and decide if I liked it for myself. My husband did not read the books, and so we watched them together, and he very much enjoyed the series, which I found surprising because he's never had any interest in reading the books whatsoever. I was cautiously optimistic going into it. I think I liked the changes and I understood why they made the changes that they made. Some of the episodes I watched multiple times and some I watched once, which in all honesty, if I'm being really honest with myself and I kind of remove the emotional component of my attachment to Wheel of Time, any show is like that for me. There are some episodes that I really enjoy and I really get into, and there are others where I'm just like, well, that wasn't my favorite, but okay, fine. So I think that was sort of my experience. Was there were some that it really hit me in the feels, and I was so excited to see finally portrayed on screen. And then there were others that my expectations were different than what I saw, and so I had to kind of figure out how I felt about that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you, Brother Dan?
I mirror a lot of what you guys are doing as well. I loved seeing my characters, but there were certain without getting specific, but when a singer popped up, I'm like, who's this guy? There's no cloak, there's no mustache, and it's such like that. I realize I have a lot of head baggage that I have to, I'm a hoarder of head baggage, and so I have to sort through some of these things still. But I try to be open-minded. I know that change itself isn't a bad thing, but I also know that change, you look at the top, to your point earlier, Ryan, about stress, the top 5 stressors are all changes. They're all, you get a new job, you move to a new house, you get married, you lose a loved one. These sort of things are all drastic changes. And I think that some people may have actually been experiencing some sort of grief, like true grief about the actual changes.
I think that's fair.
That's a good point, yeah. And a true sense of loss is like undergirding the energy that people are using to express themselves in the comments. I like that a lot. We had a very nice comment here. Let me go to the start. And this, I believe, Alan Bird, this is why more than anything we're doing this, because it is affecting relationships. It's affecting communities at large. Like a lot of people have stopped. Twitter of Time has kind of come like a ghost town since episode 8 has come dropped, right? Like it's you're right. So it's people are having a hard time, expressing themselves and coming together around this kind of big challenge that Amazon basically dropped. They made choices, and we're responding. We also here we go. Yeah, one of the things that I think is affecting people's ability to have a kind of more nuanced opinion about how they experience this product, which is the adaptation, is this notion of all or nothing thinking, right? And it's no surprise if you spend any time on the internet that's a feature. It's not a bug. It's a feature of the internet where people are expressing all or nothing thinking. The internet, I don't think, makes it. I think we all naturally come to it with a propensity to think like this. What do you guys think about that? Do you think that's affecting how people are responding to this?
Oh, absolutely. I think because that's one of those thinking patterns that we fall into really unconsciously. We may not even be aware that we're engaging in all or nothing thinking, but it's really, you're right. right? And that like it shows up in the internet because you can see it written out in phrases like, the whole thing's terrible, or the whole thing is wonderful, or whatever. And that's a really good example of kind of losing the nuance of an experience. But I think when we have an emotional reaction, it's really easy to for our brain to kind of do the shortcut, right? Is because what those statements are is really sort of like a subtext or a coded, I don't, maybe coded is not the word that I want to be using here because I don't want people to take that the wrong way, but a message of like expressing an emotional experience by trying to express it through a statement that is kind of exaggerated or captures it. Like people logically, when you say, okay, well, it can't be all one way or all another way, they're like, yeah, logically, no, but that's not what they were trying to express anyways. They're trying to express a feeling of like, it feels all bad to me, is what I hear a lot of those messages trying to say.
I mean, just to kind of bounce off of that a little bit, I've noticed within the last, I don't know how many years, maybe 6 or 7 years, maybe more than that, we become like a very hyperbolic society, where it's everything is either really, really amazing or really, really terrible. And it's like these extremes of emotion attached to even the minutia of everyday life. And so I wonder if part of it too is that it's become habitual on some level on social media platforms to just kind of overstate our feelings and then oversimplify our feelings for as much impact as possible. And like you said, you lose a lot of that nuance that you would have like in a regular conversation where you can see someone's facial expressions, you can see all of their little micro expressions, all that kind of stuff. You don't have that on something like Twitter or Facebook.
If I took 10 of my friends and all went out for sushi and we all watched the series and we had sushi and talked about it, I'd imagine 5 would like it, 5 wouldn't, and I'd go home feeling satisfied. I don't feel like, but I think there's something about the internet and the amplitude effect where the most crazy statement gets amplified and rewarded. So like this type of behavior, this kind of maladjusted thinking that we as natural cognitive misers carry into the internet, it just gets rewarded, and some nuanced thinking and arguments that take more than 1 or 2 or 3 points to bolster are out the window. If you can't encapsulate your argument in a zinger, you're not relevant on the internet. So I think there is something to that effect. Although Facebook, or even on our comment section, we did have someone write literally 6 paragraphs telling us how bad our video was. So there is a brevity.
How did that make you feel?
What was that?
So how did that make you feel, though, Ryan? I mean, so I read that, and I felt that this person was impassioned and was trying to make their case. I didn't think it was the anonymous hate that's like trash, get good. Yeah, it was.
No, I was just talking about brevity versus non-brevity. Yes, the 6 paragraphs, he really let us know in great detail how he felt. How'd that make me feel? Curious and a little concerned that we didn't express ourselves as accurately as we'd hoped to. And I think we took that to heart, and we're going to, do that better and kind of front load our intentions more obviously in the beginning of the video so that the YouTube crowd that stops halfway and starts tearing you apart might get our intentions more clearly. So we learned a lot, and we don't, and we love the engagement for sure. Although the 6 paragraph guy, I think by the 5th paragraph, he was saying that the show was a bunch of man-hating feminist Nazi shit. So it was a little. He got a little weird.
Yeah, you're right.
And he started, but to that point though, there is something to be said that the internet does kind of reward the worst natural intention. My understanding is our brains we are like what's called cognitive misers. We take understandings and then we make a pathway and say, okay, that's how it is, and then we move forward because we have to deal with the next complicated thing in front of us because the life's complicated. So we learn to kind of like label things, put them in their categories and move on. And so I think that that's a natural thing that I personally try and like not do. I try and notice that in my own thinking. I try and notice the quality of my thinking, try to notice how many options I'm really giving myself when I'm trying to make a decision about something, right? And all or nothing thinking is the least freeing of like choice making, right? If you think that things are just one way and there's no nuance, like in my mind, like sadly, I think that people who engage in that or who don't push against that, like, they have less options in life and less options in responding and less options in getting their needs met. What do you guys think about that?
I think Miki and I both have thoughts about it. Do you want to go
I
first?
saw that.
No, go ahead, Christine. What was your thought?
I was just going to say, I thought it was interesting when you're talking about how we like to sort of put things into a neat little box and then move on. As human beings, we seek resolution to things that bother us. And when you are unable to obtain the resolution that you're seeking, it's very, very difficult to move on. And we see that it's not even just in relationships, right? As a musician, you're a musician, right? When a musical line doesn't resolve, you're like, like you're just like waiting for that to please happen. But that's true in real life too. When you have something that's bothering you and you don't get a resolution, it's really hard to let go. And I think we're sort of seeing that reflected in some of the comments, is that there wasn't a resolution that was satisfactory necessarily for some people. And so it is hard to let that go and move on when you don't feel like your voice is being heard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think the thought I was having in there too is that, just like we want to avoid these all or nothing reactions, people are on a gradient as well. There are people who just naturally have more of a tendency to be drawn to novelty and enjoy novel experiences. And so change triggers less of a emotional response, or I should say a uncomfortable emotional response. And there's other folks on the other end of the gradient who prefer more stability and predictability. And for those individuals, change is harder. And I think in one of the comments I replied, just even reflecting for myself, I'm on the other side of the gradient where I don't really like change all that much. My family knows this about me, like last minute changes to plans. I don't respond well to it. It takes a minute and I have to get okay with the change. And then once I'm okay with the change, I'll move forward with it. And so I think part of it is also engaging in some self-compassion or recognizing where we are, but also recognizing it's not an all or nothing thing there either, right? Like if somebody doesn't respond like immediately to change, that doesn't make it a good thing or a bad thing. It just may mean they have a different pace in responding to change.
Mm-hmm.
Danny, you change a verse.
Ryan, the phrase is that every hour wounds, the last one kills. Change happens. So I am not change adverse at all. In fact, I try to keep my roots on wheels so that I am more adapt to change. I moved from one state to an entirely new experience. And I'm not saying it's good or bad, but I embrace it, and it is what it is, So, to your point, I think change is, not to be all cliche, but change really is the only constant. Change inevitably occurs. We see seasons happen, we see days and nights happen, and this is what time is. When the show, I guess the difference in the show is when you have an adaptation versus change, and that's where the line, I think, with the show gets a little iffy, that it's like, well, accept change, but it's like, well, no, you're adapting something that had already occurred.
So the
And
expectation, right? There's an expectation that gets subverted.
Exactly.
Right? And back to your whole loss, right? Where you're talking about the loss, you feel like you expected it to be one thing, and it's not. So then you feel like a palpable sense of loss, right?
Yeah, I mean, and we do that with any change. I feel some sort of loss not living in California anymore. I mean, that just in general, because the change occurred. It happens, and there is always going to be some sort of, well, what if regret, about any change. I think we look at that's what change is. You see that fork in the road, and you go, okay, I'm not choosing that, I'm choosing this. But there is oftentimes what was that road?
I like that you brought up expectation and adaptation, right? Because we are talking about something that we've all known for many, many years in our lives. So it's something we hold dear, and then an entity comes in and adapts it. So this isn't like, there are a lot of artists who subvert our expectations for very, very positive, amazing, and awe-inspiring outcomes, right? Like, I'm thinking about the artist Banksy specifically. He has been in his entire career just subverting expectations and looking at the world through this lens, and then giving it to us in ways that we can't help but think about our lives when we see something he does. And that's a change that I think is positive and challenging, and kind of more the exciting aspect of change. I think the thing that's really hard for people with this adaptation is that, it's not just an independent piece of art that's just coming out of nowhere. We come to this with everything that Christine brought up, everything we brought up, that we've loved these books. These books have helped people get through hard times. These books we've maybe annoyed our friends trying to get them to read it. Maybe we've lost friends trying to get them to read it. Like, so many things in our lives are surrounding these books. So we come to this with these expectations. I'm trying to think of a way to bring that into the discussion in a meaningful way, because that's, I think, undergirding the sense of loss is that the expectation bias we have about what should have been presented to us or what we wanted to have seen. Miki, were you going to say something?
Right. I think that we had a unique experience for us as a fandom in that we did have engagement from the production company beforehand, right? Rafe and Sarah and Amazon were really engaged with the fan base. And in those messages, I heard this message of, hey, we want you to shift your expectations. Please expect change in this, right? Tom's not going to have a harp. He's going to have a guitar. That was our first engagement, was there's going to be a change. And then I felt like almost every time they engaged with us after that, it was like, here's a change, be anticipating change. Right. And so I do think that they did what they could to try and set us up to expect the change. But even with that attempt, we still had expectations we were holding, internally. And again, I think a lot of it was just unconscious for a lot of us until we actually experienced it.
Well, and I think there's something to be said for being told that a change is coming, but not knowing what the change is precisely.
Yeah,
and hard sometimes.
Correct. You're gonna have to deal with something. Who knows what it is?
And I argue that if an artist is going to adapt something and consciously change it, so the efforts are not to be faithful, the efforts is to be creative using it as source material, I feel justified in being even more critical of the art than if they were just trying to give us the best eye of the world, right? If they tried to give us the best eye of the world, then we'd be talking about how well did they do it? Did they really give us the eye of the world, or did it fall short of their attempts? When you consciously just change so much, I feel like that's another thing that's, behind this is I think we a little bit even. Oh, I find myself, maybe I should just own it up. I find myself to be more critical of the art. If you're going to adapt it, I'm like, okay, well, it's got to be great. If you're going to change it, like, I just feel like it's got to be great because the original material was great. So if you're going to adapt it, hopefully it's just be amazing. And then, but like, you know, so.
And if I can, Ryan, to that point, let's say The Lord of the Rings was the movie that we saw, but all the dwarves had goatees, little trimmed goatees. There would be a strong part of the fan base that would be like, this is a wrong change. I don't know why you did it, and it's affecting the way I'm watching it. Even though the movie is the same thing, if all the dwarves had little like slick goatees instead of big old, or if the dwarves were taller than Rand, I'm sorry, but or something where they did a change like this, you would think, well, that is affecting my enjoyment of this one change alone. And I think that The Wheel of Time probably did that quite a few times for a lot of fans, is put goatees on dwarves.
I think that's a great example, Dan. I think that's a perfect example.
I really like it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Which again, I guess what I'm hoping for from this, right? And again, trying to be really clear about what the message or the hope that I'm bringing to this is that, you know, that maybe this is an opportunity for us to just be curious about ourselves, right? Like, what's happening when the goatee on the dwarf is keeping me kind of stuck in a feeling right now, and I'm not able to kind of like dive into the material or like enjoy the movie for other things at this point.
Actually, to that point, Jordan Martens says, I respond differently to different types of change. Possible changes at the bottom of the hierarchy of needs, shelter, job, food, will stress me out more than more frivolous changes. I like that.
Yeah, and I like that you did a little shout out there to Maslow and his hierarchy of needs.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks.
And by bottom, meaning the bottom, right? The best, the most, the most important.
Your most basic needs. Yeah.
Bottom sounds so negative.
You know, okay, so so diving a little more into psychological theory, right, is that, yeah, we can respond when our base needs are threatened, but you know, sometimes I'm blanking on the right term that I want to use right now, but like, that we're stressed out by those base needs being threatened in some way, but we can't really process that stress, right? We got to focus on, say that there's a global pandemic and people are feeling frustrated about that in some way, and we don't have a way to address that or process it, but then there's something else that comes up that brings up a sense of frustration. It's sort of like, the valve in a dam gets opened up, and you can divert emotional frustration into a different direction.
It's a protection.
Right, exactly. And that's not to minimize the feelings. I just think sometimes the feelings that we have about one thing can get amplified by other feelings that we're experiencing that we maybe can't do anything about or talk about or yeah.
I
think that's a great point. I'm sorry, Ryan, go ahead.
We have no control over the show, just like we have no control over whether our boss comes in a bad mood or not. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I think too, Miki, I'm glad you brought up the global pandemic, because it's valid. I think we could tie this feeling of grief, right, like you had said, Brother Dan, into what everyone's been experiencing for the past couple of years. I mean, we're coming into year 3 of being involved in a global pandemic where people actually have had that bottom tier of Maslow's hierarchy of needs directly threatened, where people have become food insecure, have become shelter insecure, have become vocationally insecure. And so there's been this constant undercurrent of dread that a lot of people have been experiencing in different ways, but it's there, right? We never know if we're going to have to quarantine. You could find out tomorrow that you have to quarantine, you have to cancel your wedding, or you have to cancel your vacation, or your kids can't go to school, or any number of things, right? So we're constantly always on edge, and we have been for a couple of years now. So when you have something that's been a constant in your life, even though it is a book series, it's very frustrating, and it can be very emotionally upsetting to then have yet one more thing that was a constant in your life that now is no longer a constant. And I do think that that's something that we need to address. It's so much more than just I like the show or I don't like the show. And I actually am glad that we got some negative feedback, because I think that it helped to kick off a deeper conversation that as a community we really should be having. I mean, we all love the Wheel of Time. So what's happening underneath the surface that is creating so much turmoil and so much fracturing within this community?
That makes me think, Christine, that what if this show had come out 5 years prior to this day now? Would the flux in our life had been settled enough that we would be more open to the change in this adaptation? And were we looking for this show to be a comfort anchor during
the pandemic,
all this craziness of working at home, and kids may or may not going to school, and all this stuff? You just want to see your book on the screen, and that too has changed.
No, I never thought about it in the backdrop of the actual pandemic, but this is a pandemic phenomenon. We started with the announcements of it, and right when I heard about the show coming out, I was. Yeah, we were full blown. It was very, very right. Am I right? The timing is like the beginning of the pandemic is when I remember learning about the Amazon show coming out. I'm sure people learned earlier than me, but for me, it was right around the beginning of the pandemic, February, March of 19.
Yeah, I think it was right at the end of the year before that. So yeah, definitely.
So yeah, I mean, I think I myself found a lot of comfort in joining in this community and getting excited for the show. And when I look at what's happening now in the community, it feels like a deflated balloon. It feels like a husk of what it used to be. And that's something I'm hoping will slowly heal. And I think let's talk about I'm seeing a lot of things in the chat where people are saying like what they like the most or what they dislike the most, and the changes and their feelings about the changes. I'm wondering if we could talk about how we can communicate to the other side, how can we communicate better and with a better understanding of how we are all coming at this with our own biases and what have you. What would be your prescription for healing the community, I guess, is what I'm getting at.
I think that's such a good question, because it comes down to how do we communicate in a way where we feel heard and the other people feel heard? That's what it boils down to. And I think, if I pull from basic couples counseling strategies, right? So here are some of the things, and not to make light of that, I want to come back to these are just general communication strategies. What ends up happening is oftentimes when we're trying to communicate an experience, we lose sight of what the other person is saying. And so, if we're just having a dialogue, two people talking, it should be like a good tennis match, right? You serve to one person, they return the thought. But for a lot of us, what ends up happening is we get really focused on what we're going to say next. So in that tennis match, we hold so tight onto our racket. We're like, yeah, I'm gonna do this move, and we're not watching where the ball is coming from, what the movements the other person is engaging in. And
real quick, I need to jump out. I'll be right back. I need to get a plug for my computer.
Sounds good. So I think part of it is the base of it is seek first to understand, then to be understood. And so I think one of the ways that we get in trouble with that, and we see that on the internet, is that people start making personalized statements, right? They start attacking the speaker. And so, and then we get into a defensive back and forth rather than hearing what the other person is saying. I see you both nodding too, so I'm wondering what you all are thinking about this idea of communicating in difficult times.
Yeah, Brother Dan, what do you think?
I think there needs to be empathy on all sides. I think if someone says this is wrong, 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 I hate it, this is not my wheel of time. If it's said in a somewhat respectful manner, I think we need to respect that opinion. Same with someone who says, this is everything I was hoping for, or someone who has no idea about the books and is like, yeah, this is a pretty good show. I don't know. It's fine. I think all these points are valid, and we had spoken before about nuance online. Nuance is not generally something that people strive for online. It's like, you suck, LOL. Something along those lines, which is not. But I think that people have been trying to engage in this conversation, in this saying, no, this it's not just change, it's this change. And I think that is the defensiveness that you're speaking of, that people are like, yeah, I'm super open-minded to change, but this is bad. Without it recognizing that this might not be an objective position, that there might be these factors that have come along with them to make that decision for them. So I think, I don't know, I'm just trying to be open-minded to all these opinions. And if someone says something somewhat respectfully, then I'm down with it. I'm engaging.
I wonder if this might be a good time too to sort of bring up the topic that we touched on in the shorter video about groupthink.
Mm-hmm.
And how we do have these impassioned sides, and we feel compelled to pick a side.
That does go to that all or nothing that you were referring to earlier, Miki.
Yeah, and I think it's also can lead us to shut out, when we think about groups, it can lead us to shut out other people. And when people feel shut out, that's when the defensiveness comes back up too. In that statement of, I really appreciated the number of people who said, look, I'm not defensive against change. I just want you to hear that I disliked this. And so, wanting to be heard in those moments is really powerful. And I think the other thing I'm thinking too, and I don't think I can connect this back to groupthink, but it's just another piece of advice in this is, if we're about to make one of these statements, whether it's online or in person or whatever, just asking ourselves, what's the end goal here? Like, what am I looking for with this statement? Right? Do I really want to change this person's mind? Is that, if I'm responding to someone who said, the change was terrible or the change was wonderful, and I come back and say, no, you're wrong. What do I want to have happen with that statement? And if I can't think of a good reason, then maybe I should just, be checking myself and say, oh, okay, am I just responding out of my own emotion, right? Is this a defensive response right now? And can I take a step back and just hear what they're having to say instead?
Mm-hmm.
I call that last wordism, where you're where you have to just type that last, okay, well, I'm done with this conversation. There's no way we can engage it. You know what? If you think that, just walk away. You don't have to type it. But they do.
Hey, Hybrid Havoc. It's
Hey.
nice to see you. It's good to see new names.
I like that logo. Those two H's.
It's very
with the
cool. It's very
Yeah.
chic. I like it. It's
All right.
very chic. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
And a
Nice.
red line, like something of the dividing red line.
Either you're with H or against H.
Yeah, that was definitely something that was brought up. How people who felt that they didn't like what they were hearing from the showrunners, and they started complaining about it. They felt ostracized immediately from different Facebook groups and Instagram groups, what have you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and this, sorry to speak over you, Ryan. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, like, if I wonder if you could speak to what might have been happening to those who were really, what might have been happening there. So, I imagine, and this particular person kind of took it a little far and had some extreme views, but I've heard this time and time again that people who did not like it, and my brother and I have experienced this on our show, if we engage in like honest criticisms, people don't want to hear it. And I understand that, like, if it's just, yeah, and that's the freedom of entertainment. Like, yeah, you just don't like it, turn it off. Like,
it's gone both ways, to be honest, Ryan. Some people don't want to hear praise, and some people do not want to hear negative.
Which I find so fascinating, right? Because I am fairly new to the WoT community, even though I've been reading the books for like 26 years. Like, I'm one of those folks who didn't realize there was this big of a community for so many years. But, you know, in going back and reading listservs and, you know, hearing from people who've been part of the active community for years, we've been doing this for a long time, folks. You know, the books would come out and people would have disagreements about things. And it wasn't just like, you know, and I know we have first-time readers and non-readers in there, so I'm not going to cite any actual examples, but you know, that we've been doing this for years. We can disagree about this series. Like, we have proven it for years that we are okay holding differing views and not liking everything about this series. I know that I've engaged in some really great conversations about things where, you know, people believe that there were misses within the original source material. And so yeah, I guess I'm a little bit also confused, Ryan, about
Miki, yeah, no, Miki, I love this point. We had you brought this up in one of our just show prep meetings. Like, yeah, like, it's curious how we become intolerant of debate when this community will debate the smallest minutia and go on and on and on and on to great length. It's interesting, and a lot of these debates are honest to God just opinion debates, and they're not really just theory and fact-based debates, just like we're having now. We're having opinion debates about whether or not we like the show or we think they have a right to do X, Y, Z. What are you gonna say, Christine?
I was just going to say, you know, I think debate is a good thing. I think it's good to actually not always agree with other people. We shouldn't always agree on everything all the time. It's not good. I mean, I can't think of a better word, but, you know, it's good to be challenged every so often, because it makes you stop and think about why you think something, or maybe why you feel something. And, you know, when we take a normal disagreement where we can discuss it in an adult way and in a productive way, and then we start making personal attacks instead of what the thing is that we're disagreeing about, it's like, well, if you're not going to agree with me, then you are this way. And that's where we kind of become combative, and that's where, you know, people shut down, and that's where people walk away. And I kind of feel like part of the fracturing within our community, to your point, is not that we are incapable of disliking things or disagreeing on things. It's that it's become much more personal. And it's hurtful. You know, it's hurtful to hear bad things about, you know, people making assumptions about you as an individual within a community that you love.
I like this point. Dana says I could only just take so much negativity, the super angry emotional attacks. She hit her limit as a moderator on YouTube and Discord, and it's overwhelming. I could totally understand that. And I wonder if it's some of the vitriol is kind of, you know, like we come from a world where we could talk about whether or not, like, you know, the Age of Legends was, you know, XYZ, and we can go on and have emotional, just something about having the same type of emotional conversations about the show. I think I want to go back to Dan's point about loss. I think, like, what we're seeing is people experiencing a loss and trying to, like, put that out in the world. I think it's one part of, like, why the negativity is so visceral. Like, I've never experienced this, but also, I mean, to be honest, I've never consumed any media in any way like this. Like, I've never, like, dissected a TV show like this. Like, I've never gone frame by frame like I have with this show. I've never been a part of a community around a show or a book. So this is all new to me. I don't know if this is similar. Maybe check, let me know if they've experienced the same thing in other fandoms when big companies come in and you know, start making products around that fandom. Is it the same experience? Let me know, or let us know. But for me, I'm shocked. I'm shocked at just how so much like a kind of gatekeeping is going on. I think that's the word, where people just don't really want you to express that, so they tell you you're not really allowed to say these things. And, and I've seen a lot of that. And I think, and I just think it's interesting. I think like we're talking about something that's so precious and so important to people, and integrated in their lives in many ways. We have fans who have many Wheel of Time tattoos and what have you. So it's a huge part of everyone's lives who are probably watching right now. So we all come to that with that. But I think our motivation is to try and help mitigate some of that, like the edge of it, right? You know, there's obviously going to be people who are going to always take something to a very extreme, and there's always going to be people who are, I think, hard to engage with. But I also think that maybe if we, as fans, take a little bit of time to, you know, be clear with ourselves, be clear with what we're trying to say, and give people maybe a little bit more space to say what they need, and maybe if we're showing empathy towards someone who's saying things we disagree with, we can start finding that common ground that I think we used to be able to find. Even when we were disagreeing on debates, we all agree, okay, well, we still like the book. All right, good night and see you later. We'll debate tomorrow.
I should say, Ryan, this vitriol is not a sudden thing. This thing did happen on Theoryland and Dragon Mount, where, you know, there would be these back and forths where people would just fire off this minutia and do so in a passive aggressive kind of, you know, gross way. This isn't brand new to the series. However, the series certainly has triggered, I think, a lot of emotions in people, good and bad. And I think a lot of people like this show. The book is number 2 on Amazon? Well, I mean, it's their book, but I mean, there's a lot of people that are buying the Wheel of Time now, and I think that that's only a good thing. Whether, I mean, so to your point about gatekeeping, are we going to be like, oh, you're a show person and now you're getting into the book and such? Change is weird, you know, but this book series is blowing up, you would say. It's going viral, and it's because of the show series. So like it or not, people are getting into this community.
I've seen a bunch of tweets where people saying, oh, I love the series, I bought book 1. And then they get like 500 likes. Twitter times like, oh, we love you, reward.
One of us.
and I go to their page, they got like 25 followers, but they're like, we love WoT. And then boom, it's great.
Well, I wonder if, just kind of digging a little bit deeper into this idea of change, I'm really glad that you brought up the gatekeeping and the way that people are coming into this community. Do you think it's possible, and I'm asking everybody, even in the chat, do you think it's possible that part of the resistance to change isn't just about the show, but also about the face of our community and what our community looks like, right? The makeup of our community. We're not just a group of people who really loved a book series. We're now a group of people who maybe never read the book, but love the television series. And so is that part of it too? Because some people love being part of a niche fandom, whether it's a musical fandom, a literary fandom, whatever. And when it no longer feels like something special or something quasi-secret, does that change your level of enjoyment in being a part of that community?
Yeah, it'd be like finding out like the local band that you like to go see on a Friday night at the pub got signed by Amazon.
But this is the greatest American epic fantasy series ever written, and we are still thinking it's indie. You know, there is nothing that comes closer.
But it's fantasy, right? So it's not something, and I'm not saying that to like knockdown fantasy. Obviously I love it. I have a WOT tattoo of my own, but like,
Yeah.
I think it's not required reading in other classes. So we look at like other forms of literature where you have like Steinbeck as required reading, or you have, like all of these other things that as you move through life and you move through your education, you are exposed to certain types of literature. And a lot of people don't get into fantasy. So within the fantasy community, yeah, of course, it's like everyone loves WOT, but a lot of people don't read fantasy at all. So for them, it's something completely new.
Well, everyone should read Steinbeck, to your point, Christine. I think everyone, by the time they're seniors, should read one Steinbeck.
Yes,
this
the winner
well
is content.
This is actually really well put. Lots of people come out of the woodwork who disguise their real world prejudice as anger at the show changes.
Mm-hmm.
And those
Thanks,
are not good
Dana.
faith discussions. Really well put.
Yeah, I was sitting here thinking about that, and I really appreciate that you made that comment, Dana, because I was thinking about that with the gatekeeping, right? And I think we've seen real prejudice come out, and so that there's a purpose for gatekeeping, right? Gatekeeping itself is not all good or all bad thing. There is a purpose for it, and so when there are individuals doing harm to others through hateful acts or speech, that then it behooves us as a society to care for people who are being harmed. But I think what ends up happening is that certain voices get really loud, right? And that they claim to speak for an entire group when maybe they don't, And so I think I feel frustrated at times when people have a valid complaint about like the show or something, and then other folks will come in and jump off of that statement, but then speak from these places of deeper prejudice or hateful speech, and it shuts down the original comment, right? And I think then maybe other people feel pulled to like get focused in there, and then other folks' voices get lost in that. And so I, for one, will completely speak up against, hateful speech when it comes up. And I get angry when that happens because I think it shuts down other valid statements that other folks are making.
Mm-hmm. And there is, and again, this is a reflection of the changes that were made. If someone in their head thinks that Edmonds Field was this homogenous society that has no deviations, and there are some, then it blows their headcanon away. This is baggage that they are carrying with them that a non-book reader wouldn't even think twice about,
Yeah, going back to those, like the expectations we bring into it, and the expectations we bring into any artwork, right? Like when we are consuming art, and I guess we are going to call television art now. Let's put television in the world of art, right? And someone asked me earlier, and let's go back to this. Here's a start question. Book publishers are corporations as well. I'm curious if you think Tor the same way as you think of Amazon, Ryan, meaning the restraints publishers put on writers, for one thing. And that's interesting. I always, I think I have a different, what makes me think of that is just kind of, I think what the different art forms, right? I think I do understand that Tor wants to make money, but I also feel like they have a long history of being able to produce like the art that we like. Right, like high quality art, and you can almost assume that the editor relationship with the artist and the writer is more. But maybe I'm being completely bamboozled and hopeful thinking. But I kind of have a more distrusting feeling about like Amazon, the multinational corporation that runs the world, as I do of Tor books. Personally,
I think that's fair, but I also think that there's this like long history of this too, right? Like, the Medicis, they supported the arts too. And gosh, I would be really sad if they hadn't, because we might not have some amazing pieces of art now. But
I think comparing Tor to Amazon is comparing like Walmart to a family market, to be honest. Amazon is a book reseller. They are not a publisher. So there is a difference. So I don't know.
I liked the comment that you put up there from Hybrid Havoc. Sorry.
Say, hey, old lady Hembrew.
Hi, old lady Hembrew.
I'm so stoked to meet you. I hope you live up to your name.
Aw. Thanks, old lady.
You're the best. Yeah. Come back.
Yeah.
Come back.
Please come back. Yeah, I really liked what Hybrid Havoc said too. Can you throw her comment back up there, or their comment back up there?
I will when I find it.
Right, so scroll.
Yep. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Hybrid Havoc says, I do think this is a thing that most fandoms struggle with. There is a sense of entitlement, of ownership over the property because we were all here first and we contributed to getting to this point. And to that end, I do believe that there is valid criticism to be said, wherein many people felt that, and I wonder what's really behind it, but many people felt that if you were going to criticize something, the show's not coming out. So they felt that they were somehow employed by Amazon to make sure that people aren't online making negative comments because maybe executives will read those comments and not put the show out. And I've seen that leading up to the show. I've seen that time and time again.
Oh, Jesus. All right. I'm sorry.
Many meetings about this, MaTsDaGger.
All right. Duly noted. Thank you, MaTsDaGger.
But, yeah, what do you guys think about that point?
I totally got derailed.
I'm sorry, what was the point?
I'm all like, what point did I just make? That was just too funny.
So what'd you think of that?
All right, so, yeah, and what do you guys think of what I just said?
I will get a new mic, I promise. Gosh darn it.
Damn it, MaTsDaGger. Then we all lost our train of thought.
No,
So
that's
I think the point was about gatekeeping in general, right? And about certain fandoms. I think that Game of Thrones certainly had some sort of issue. I was a big Game of Thrones kind of, I lurked on their things as well. I really like theories and stuff. And Game of Thrones was filled with them, but there was also a lot of hate against the show as well. So to the prior point that who's it? Havoc? Yeah. I think that people who are hardcore fans are going to nitpick, and this is what we do as hardcore fans. And so when you throw something on the screen, we're gonna nitpick, and we don't even have to nitpick with Wheel of Time. We can just whole monkey pick. We can just, I don't know. So, well,
you can just like take the whole
nitpick, like monkeys, social grooming and stuff.
And then you're just saying like pick the whole monkey up and throw it out?
Pick the whole monkey up.
Just not one bit at a time.
I don't know, guys. Analogies are hard.
Yeah, that's okay. And this is a safe space for you to explore your trouble with analogies, so that's fine.
All right. And I mean, like, let's real quickly acknowledge Nerdy Guns. Thank you for creating a safe space where it's okay to have different opinions. Exactly.
Nerdy Guns, thank you.
Exactly. How else are you going to build community? And I don't want a community of people who think like me. That's freaking boring. Exactly. I don't want to date me. And I don't want to hang out with me. I want to hang out with other people because I hang out with myself 24 hours a day. I need new things.
Yeah, and I want to say thanks to the chat too. Like everybody's been so kind and considerate in chat. It's been really nice watching this the chat roll through.
We have a great community. We really have a wonderful community. We really do.
Yeah.
Not my monkey, not my nitpick.
Well, and I would actually say that this show is a result of the community, not a this isn't in spite of the community. This is because of the community. How many like a Song of Ice and Fire mental health podcasts are there, or video? I'm not sure. There may be a couple. But this is, you guys are doing great. And I think this is as a result of a community that recognizes individuality, recognizes, some sort of diversity, and recognizes the atmosphere in which we could talk about these things as mature adults, whether we agree or not, and just just talk about it. But I love this show, guys. You guys are doing great.
Dan, I'm not going to go so as far as to say that our audience is full of mature adults, though. I'm not going to say that.
I will say 75% are, and the rest of the 25%, you know who you are.
Our top Patreon members.
Hey.
I just had a moment where I came back to what Ryan was talking about. Remember when we got
what? Tell us.
It was the community, right? Like this piece about the statement that before the show was coming out, there was this kind of fear that was being expressed that if we say negative things about the show, that the producers are going to hear that. And and this, Dan, what you were saying, the point about like the show wasn't despite the community, it was because of the community, because we are such a strong community. It really contributed to the ability to have this show. And so it's one, remember, that's what you were saying. So, hey, got back on the tracks. But two, I think, wanting to, again, acknowledge those fears, right? So when we hear people shutting down criticism, holding onto the empathy, hearing the fear underneath that statement of like, I'm afraid of loss. And so what often happens when we have arguments, right, is that sometimes we can be having the same motivating factor. Both of these statements are, I'm afraid of loss. I'm afraid of changes in the show because I'm afraid of losing something that I love. And then, I'm afraid if you complain about this show, I could lose something that I would love. And so if we can tune into that and really just like have that empathy for it, I think we can have a lot more of these open conversations.
Yeah, I love that, Miki.
Well, actually, to that, I think you started answering Beth's question. Thank you, Beth, so much. I do agree that this is great. Do you have any advice / tools to give to people to engage people in healthy discussions, even though they may, I think she may disagree. This could also apply to outside of the WOT fandoms. Yes, so let's talk about disagreements and conflict resolution. Real brief overview. Let's go back to your couples counseling, Miki.
Yeah. So
she's always wrong, Miki. She's always wrong. She's gonna tell you she's not. She's gonna tell you it's me. It's always her. What do we do, Miki? She's always wrong.
I want to hear both sides, right? And I want you to speak to each other, not to me. I think that right there, there's a piece of it, right? Is that sometimes when we're having a disagreement, we talk to other people trying to get them to agree with us, right? So maybe I'm in disagreement with Christine, but I'll call you up, Ryan, being like, yeah, Ryan, Christine said this thing. You should really believe me, right? Right. What does that do? It fractures us. And so, talk to each other, right? So if we're coming back to the social media thing, if you can, right? If you have the bandwidth to engage, engaging directly in a kind and empathetic way can be helpful. Other key rules, right? I statements versus you statements. And what we mean by that is when we're speaking with someone with whom we're having a disagreement, instead of talking about them, you always do this thing. You are such a blah, 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 blah. Those are you statements. Speaking from our own experience instead, those are I statements, I feel unheard when you lash out at me with generalized statements, and I would prefer if you could refer back to the point that I was making in my post. So speaking from your own experience and giving people actionable items that would help them reconnect with you. So those are a couple of things.
I would say learning to walk away as well, to not engage. You know, once you make your point, you don't need to kick that dead horse in the road. It's done, and whether someone's going to take it or not, you just say, okay, well, have a nice weekend. And that's it. And feel free to walk away.
I guess we should say trigger warning for anybody who doesn't like dead horses.
Who has kicked a dead horse, whose dad made them kick a dead horse. Kick it! Kick it!
Oh my God.
Kick it! All right, I'm sorry.
All right, Dan, you promised not to do that.
I know. All right, I'm back.
No, I think that's valid. I mean, I think, you know, kind of somewhere in between what both Miki and Brother Dan are saying is that I think maybe you can walk away. If you have a discussion that you really are unable to emotionally disconnect from in the moment, maybe step back for a little bit. Maybe don't walk away completely if you want to continue the discussion, but maybe step back and then kind of take a deep breath and then come in when you can discuss it in a way that's not solely based on emotion or that's not solely based on critiquing the other person. Being able to validate someone else's feelings, even when you disagree with them, can be very powerful in conflict resolution. So if, you know, like Miki, you know, you are so wrong about that thing that we talked about that you called Ryan and like all of that. Instead of that, you know, I could say, you know what, Miki, I understand why you felt that way. And I understand that these are your feelings and my feelings are X, Y, and Z. So it's okay to acknowledge that someone else has feelings other than the feelings that you have. That's also kind of scary sometimes because it can put you in a very vulnerable emotional position. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah. And great example, Christine, because I think I'll bounce off of that and say, you know, like, it's okay to admit when you're wrong. So in that example we've been giving, me being able to say, you know, if you said that first part, like, you know what, you're right. I messed up. I shouldn't have gone to Ryan in that situation. It would have played out better if I had actually come to you and talked directly to you about it. So being able to say I'm sorry so we have a great policy actually at my workplace. I love it. It's the oops, ouch policy, right? That we commit to being able to say both oops and ouch. So somebody says something that is hurtful to you, being able to say out loud, ouch, that thing that you said felt hurtful. And then when you have said something hurtful or done something hurtful, being able to say, oops, right? In that, like, oh, okay, I hear you. I hear that thing felt hurtful or you experienced it hurtfully. And that's leaning into this other idea that we hold too, that intention doesn't equal impact, right? I might not intend to say something hurtful. I might be intending to try and get my point across. But if I can hear that the impact was different than what I intended.
Oh no.
Lost Miki.
We lost you. We can't hear you.
Oh no.
She was on a roll.
I know. That was a great one too. I'm like, what's she going to say?
Am I back now?
Yeah.
You're back now, yes.
Okay. Where did you lose me?
Right when my hand raised,
Intent.
I don't know. Yeah. When it got
intent doesn't equal impact is the statement. So even though you had good intent, that doesn't mean that the impact that you had was good. So.
Right.
Someone said that. Oh my God. All right.
Thanks, Adam.
She froze.
That's really. Oh my gosh, Dean Moxley. Hey, buddy. Haven't seen you in a while.
It's been a while.
We need you on Tavern Talk, buddy.
Yeah.
So, but to that, and I am also realizing we have like flown through our hour.
No, it's been great.
So
The chat's been flowing.
I derail. Sorry, guys. Yeah.
We all do.
No,
It's
Do
okay.
we want to skip intentions or do we want to start with intentions right now? All right. Well, every show we do, we are going to wrap up the show by giving you guys our intentions, which is our way of summarizing what we think the true meaning of this conversation is and what we hope you guys take from it. Is anybody ready? If not, I can go.
Oh, there was a chat that I want to highlight. I don't have the power to. Eric's point about the crux of a lot of issues is personal conflict, is miscommunication. If you could throw that up, Ryan, I think that's a great. I like that.
Yeah.
Boy, I bet Perrin would know how to deal with these women.
Right.
Yeah. No, Matt would know how to deal with the women, really, right? That's... But since I started it, I'm going to bounce off that for intention, right? Is recognizing that what we really boiled down to is really coming back. And people were asking, like, how do we communicate better? And recognizing that a lot of the fracture that we have, we experience in our life, comes from miscommunication. And so I think it can be a daily intention for me to say, can I slow down? And can I do everything in my power to communicate well, to make sure that I am understanding the people in my life today?
Excellent, Miki. Before we continue, I just want to thank everyone for joining us. If you want to add what you think you have taken out of this conversation in chat, please do so. We're going to follow this up with a guided meditation from Miki, so rest assured the tradition continues.
Ryan, if I can, I don't want to hijack, but let's everyone in the chat and everyone here just throw positive shit to our friend MaTsDaGger.
Positive shit.
Just throw some positive shit. He has a CT going on tomorrow. He could use some centering, he said. So much love, my man, for real.
So much love.
God damn, so much love. And
guys,
we are all thinking good things about you right now.
If you follow these guided meditations, by the 10th episode, you will be floating 1 inch off of your chair.
In the lotus position?
In the lotus position. Yes.
I feel like we need like a running disclaimer now.
Yeah. You will float.
You might, warning, you might transcend space-time continuums and float. Yeah. Amazing.
To your point, Dan, I'm going to echo it too. Like, MaTsDaGger is such a positive, voice in our community, and such a, positive influence. And so, yes, absolutely. Positive shit coming your way.
Thank you, guys.
All the positive shit. We even shared a manicure once, MaTsDaGger and I. We both had the same black nail polish and everything.
That's right.
So, Matt is a great guy. And, sending you all the yellow Aja healing vibes.
Let's go,
Matt, are you can you breathe under all this? It's an avalanche of love, Matt.
Yeah.
It's an avalanche.
Create an air pocket, Matt, so you can breathe under the love.
Yeah.
Hashtag positive shit.
Love you, man. Love you so much. Mwah. Thank you, guys.
So, thank you, Brother Dan. And I think that's a good way to frame what this show is about. Our intention is to create positivity, help improve the store of empathy we all have inside of ourselves. If we could access it and push that out into the world, I think the world would be a better place. I certainly would like to live in that world, so I'm going to manifest it as best as I can. So, so the intention of this show is to understand that everyone comes to anything we're debating or experiencing with their own experiences and expectations, and all of which are valid, and everyone is going to experience a piece of art or the world, and with those experiences and expectations, acting as a lens around how they see the world. So if we can all understand that better and carry that as an active understanding that we practice, we talk about what is a practice. Like, one of my practices is like trying to understand that if the person in front of me, I would be doing the same thing if I lived that person's life and I was in that moment. So like if we could just kind of all continue to expand our empathetic abilities, I think we would have less fracturing fandom, and we would have a more happy experience with this show and whatever. So yeah, so that's my intention. I think let's expand our empathy and understand that people are coming at this with baggage we have no idea about.
Mm-hmm. That's well said, Ryan.
Thank you. Christine, do you have one?
Yeah, I mean, I think just to kind of go off of what you were saying, you never know what someone else is going through. And the flip side of that is that we can't assume that people know what we're going through. So if we're having a bad day and we're taking it out on someone and they respond in a way that shows that maybe they're hurt or angry or whatever, we can't just assume that they understand that we've had a bad day, and that's where that communication piece comes in, right? And that's where that ability to apologize and be vulnerable comes in. One of the things that I talked about in the shorter video that we did was the existential approach to psychotherapy. And so one of the famous sort of cornerstones of that is the idea that we are all active participants in our own lives, right? So there is a responsibility that we all have to not just ourselves, but to other people. So part of that is that exchange, being aware, yes, other people have feelings, but also those people are not necessarily aware of my feelings. So I think having an open mind and approaching things from a place of kindness and empathy, even when it's hard, usually tends to serve us well in our daily lives.
Well said. And Brother Dan, how about you take everything we all said and put a bow on it?
Okay. I think we all want to be heard. I think that this is the crux of most of the discussion that goes online, is that we all want our opinions to matter. And so what I am personally taking is that I try to elevate a conversation rather than go into the shit that someone may want to drag me in. And I like talking about these things. I like communicating. I like the discourse. I honestly do. And if someone is respectful, I will do a 5 or 6 paragraph response to their 5 or 6 paragraph statement. Discourse is good. We have to stop taking things personally, and we also have to stop trying to personalize things.
Discourse. Yep. Mm-hmm.
And so I think that is the takeaway that I'm doing, is that these things are good. These things have existed for a while. Things get extreme at times, but for the most part, instead of dipping down into the mud pit that a pig may want to wallow, I try to elevate the conversation and get
less wallowy.
Sty.
Oh, there he is.
We lost you in the worst. Oh no!
Less sty. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right. If we could all look at the private chat real quick and let me know what you guys think before we move forward. We are going to move into the guided meditation portion of our show. We end every show with a guided meditation by one of our professionals. And we will do that shortly. I want to announce that after the show, join us on Discord. We will be having a group chat in our Discord channel. If you've not joined our Discord, the link should be in the description of the video. If it's not, one of our mods will pop it in. But we do have a Discord. We will have a voice channel. Find us in the after show voice chat, and let's chat. We've not been able to connect in some time. Yes. Thank you, Susan. You're exactly correct. So
People do care.
Yeah, and again, much love to MaTsDaGgerX. He said these CT scans are more stressful than treatments, and I can only imagine. I took the SATs and they stressed me out, but they weren't telling me about my health.
Yeah, really.
Very different. Yeah, I can't imagine what you're going through. I love that you are so honest with us, Mr. Dagger. All right, so yeah, the Discord is here. We will be having a spoiler-free discussion because there might be some first-time readers in there. But yeah, let's get together and talk about change and everything else. But if we're ready, let's move into the guided meditation. And
this is my favorite part, Ryan.
Thank you.
I cried the last time.
Aw.
I did.
Oh,
It's so sweet.
that was one of my favorites too.
That was
I'm
heavy.
waiting for the
Man,
background.
I
Right.
very personalized what you were saying, Miki, and I was each word I was taking, and your repetition of words like hit home like a sledgehammer. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, Dan, Brother Dan, sit back and relax. I hope you get a similar mode of experience. Everyone, find the most comfortable position you can. And if you have headphones on, please put them on. If you have children, put the binky in their mouth. Tell them to be quiet for 10 minutes.
Give them some fruit snacks. We're going deep.
All right, everyone, let's mute our mics. And Miki, take it away.
Okay. So, as Ryan said, allow yourself to get in the most comfortable position that you're able in this moment. Perhaps that is laying, or you're seated, or even if you're standing or walking somewhere in this moment, just allow yourself to find a sense of ease in wherever you are. I'd like to invite you to bring your attention inward and become aware of your breath. Taking a breath in, allowing the breath to fill your lungs, and gently exhaling. Again, allowing yourself to take a breath in, gently exhaling, and settling into a sense of ease. With each additional breath, allow your attention to settle into the internal changes that occur with every breath. Feel the change in the diameter of your chest as it expands with the breath in. Feel the change around your mouth and your nostrils, feeling the air as you exhale out. We allow our attention to drift throughout our body, being aware of our heart beating, the change in pressure with every beat, being aware of our back or our shoulders, the muscles in our face, in our neck, becoming aware that there are slight changes there too. Even as we are sitting still, our muscles are subtly adjusting and changing, allowing us to keep our posture, allowing our breath to come in and come out. There are changes in the pressure in our veins and our arteries with each beat of our heart. And notice any emotions that arise with this awareness. Notice that they shift and change too. You might notice as you're allowing your attention to focus in on any of these areas, tension in your back or neck, that there is tension there. I want you to notice any judgment that arises with this awareness of tension. And see if you can engage in some self-compassion and embrace that tension, recognizing that the tension is serving a purpose. Perhaps we can be a little gentle with any judgment we might have of it. And notice if that tension is serving you right now. So again, focusing your attention on just a part of your body where maybe that tension feels a little uncomfortable. Noticing that discomfort and seeing if you can adjust it in any way, perhaps shifting your neck, your shoulders, your back, wherever that is. Again, we are not judging that tension. And we're going to recognize that the tension plays a purpose right now. The focus that we are looking for is balance. We balance tension that allows us to sit up with ease that allows us to sit in comfort. Now I'm going to invite you to allow your focus to drift outward. Notice the air around you. Notice that it also shifts and changes. Notice the walls, the floor, the space around you. And become aware that they too are experiencing change. It might be slow and very subtle change, but even bricks and stone experience change over time. We can become aware here also of tension, that this tension plays a role. The tension holds the walls up. The tension keeps the roof over our heads. And we may become aware of changes over time that we allow ourselves to intervene in, maybe repair cracks in the wall, but also holding a gentle acceptance of that change, that these walls will shift and change over time, that the roof overhead will shift and change over time. Now allow your focus to drift further out, perhaps to the world directly outside of the space that you're in. Perhaps there is nature there, trees or plant life, the ground around you. Become aware that that is also experiencing change. Sometimes immediate change is the wind blows through the trees. Sometimes slow and subtle change as that tree may grow and expand. Again, we lean into the awareness of impermanence, that these things will also change over time. And within that change, there is tension. Just as the wheel of time turns, It changes over time. Ages come to pass, and those change as well. Within the changes, there is tension. A wheel that moves across the ground moves because there is tension against the ground. So we notice any reaction that we are having to the change in the tension and aim for balance, allowing there to be tension, but ease, allowing that there may be pressure, but also comfort. So with that, we're going to bring our attention back inward to our body and take a final breath in together. Breathing in, being aware of the change. Breathing out, aware of the tension that allows the exhale. And we wish you all a very good night or day wherever you are.